Hi, I am Rachel Denbow, and I am one of the teachers here at the studio school. And tonight we're going to be doing natural dyeing with plants. I'm going to do a demo with you with the yellow onion skins. Hopefully, you've been able to collect those or save those if you want to participate. Otherwise, you can just watch and see what we're doing. Um, the premise of this tonight is just to get you excited about possibly joining us in the winter session. We are going to be having a 4-week class where what we talk about today is just touching briefly on what we will be teaching in the 4-week session. It's going to be about creating a sustainable wardrobe and seeing the resources that are local and natural in Oklahoma, um, using things that you can find in your kitchen, and all the ways that you can start thinking differently um, about what plants and flowers offer regarding color and how you can use that at home with your craft supplies or in your wardrobe. So today I'm going to show you a little bit, kind of a teaser, just to whet your appetite on the things you can do with natural colors. And we're going to be using yellow onions. These are really easy to find. You can dye with other kinds of onion skins, but yellow onion skins produce the richest color, in my opinion. Um, and these are the ones I always use most often at home. So, what we're going to be using is the papery part of some yellow onion skins. Um, what you're going to need for a class similar to this or a dye session similar to this, excuse me, my mask is wanting to come off, is you're going to need fiber, 100% natural fiber, whether that is cotton or silk or linen or wool. It needs to be 100% natural. Anything that's got polyester or rayon or anything synthetic is not designed to be used with natural dyes. You want to use acid-based dyes for that. So if you don't have anything at home, you can always go thrifting, or you can like do a swap with your friends to find something that's 100% natural and also undyed. You don't want to grab like an olive green cotton shirt and try to dye it with yellow onion skins, because it's gonna just be muddy brown. So let's see. That's the first thing you want to do, is have 100% natural fibers. And then you want to go through a process of getting those clean so that they are open to receiving the dye. And that sounds like very like new agey, but like literally they need to be like free from oils and free from any dirt or waxes that were used in processing, so that the fibers within those can open up and receive as much dye as possible, resulting in a darker color. So what you want to do is, once you get your fibers that you're going to use, the very first step is called scouring. And you can do that depending on if it's a cotton or linen, something that can be thrown into the washing machine. You can just do that and put it on hot water. Use a natural or a pH sensitive detergent, mild detergent. And then you can dry it or you can leave it wet depending on what stage you're at, how soon you'll be able to dye with it. If it's wool or silk, you're going to want to be a little bit more careful. You might want to hand wash those in hot water. With wool, you don't want to agitate anything because it will felt. Um, so that's the first process, is the scouring. And again, that gets all of the oils off of the fiber so that it is open to receiving the dye. So the second step for your fiber, pretend this is a pot with nothing in it. You're going to fill up a pot. This is a stock pot. I think it's about 16 quarts, but you can use, you don't want to use anything that you cooked with at home, because in the future, you might have metals that have been used in your dye pots, and that can be toxic for cooking with. So any pots that you use for dyeing, you want to make sure they are like labeled somehow or a different brand from your spaghetti pots, so you don't cross-contaminate. So you want a stock pot, and you want to fill it up with enough water to make sure that whatever fiber that you're going to put in it has enough room to move around, because you're going to stir it so that the color takes evenly, or the mordanting, which we're going to do next, takes evenly. So this is the fiber that I'm going to be dyeing for you tonight to show you the steps. And after this is filled up, which right now it's got something else in it, but I'm going to be taking about 2 tablespoons worth of alum. Now, alum is a mordant, and mordanting is the process of adding something to help the dye bite onto the fiber. I think like the Latin for mordant is to bite, something like that. And this is alum. It's just a salt-based mineral. It is easy to find at any grocery store. You can also buy it in bulk. I ordered this online. It's used for pickling, so it's not very expensive and it's easy to get a hold of. And it does kind of look like salt. I've never tasted it. I'm probably not going to. You're going to add about 2 tablespoons for this size pot with, maybe 3/4 filled with water. You're going to add 2 tablespoons of this. This is the most user-friendly mordant. There's a variety of mordants that you can use. This is it's not necessarily toxic or anything because it's a salt. People use it for cooking, but you wouldn't want to stick your face over the pot and inhale. You don't necessarily want to eat with this, but it is very user-friendly, and there are definitely mordants that are out there that you would have to put on an N95 mask, which many of us have at home now, and gloves, and do it outside. So you're going to add your alum to your dye pot. This is your mordant. You want to make sure that your water is hot enough for the alum to dissolve. Get it nice and stirred up because you don't want chunks of it settling onto your fiber. So this is the mordanting process. Then you want to soak your fiber in water for about 20 minutes. Now this has already been scoured, but when you get it wet, again, that helps those pores of the fiber to open up and take more dye. So pretend this has been soaking for 20 minutes. And once my alum has dissolved, I'm going to go ahead and stick my fiber in the dye pot. But I'm not really because there's onion skins already in here. So pretend we're sticking this in the mordant pot. And it's disappearing from view because it's in the pot. So it's a magic show tonight. You're going to stir that up, and you want to heat it to you want a medium heat until you get to a simmer, or a boil is fine. And you're gonna want that simmer or boil for about 30 minutes minimum. That's going to be long enough for the alum to attach to the fibers and to really soak into everything so that it takes the color evenly. So you're preparing your fiber. After that has soaked for 30 minutes, then you can either take out your fiber and use the same pot and add your dye to that pot, or you can use a separate pot. It just depends on how many pots you have laying around. But you want to take your fiber out because if you add your dye stuffs into that pot, it's not quite dissolved yet, and some dyes take a longer amount of time to really release their color. And there's some dyes like this. This is madder root that has been crushed up. It's like a bark that you'll find here in the Midwest region. You don't want this to be sitting on your fiber in any one spot because it could create little dark spots of color. So take your fiber out, put your dye in the pot, let that get hot enough again to dissolve, and then you can add your fiber back to the pot. Okay, so I've taken out my fiber, taking it out. I'm ready to now dye, and I want to add my dye stuffs to the dye pot. We're going to do yellow onion skins, and I've already prepped this, so it's been going for about 20 minutes. Make sure you remove all of your stickers from your yellow onion skins. Now we're only going to use the papery outside because it's got all the color in it. The parts that you get in, when you get in a little bit and you can tell they're a little bit squishy, we don't need to use those parts. If there's a little color left on it, rip that off and throw it in. And then make French onion soup or give them to your friend, or have some onion cooking lessons. But be sure that you're using these. You can chop them up and freeze them. So you can hear that crunchy part. That's the part that we really want to put in the in the dye pot. And if you would like to really take your time collecting these instead of going to Sprouts or Trader Joe's or Crest or wherever you get your groceries, you can just every time you cook with onions, save all the papery bits, put them in an open container like a brown paper bag so that there's a little bit of circulation. You don't want it to get moldy. Or you can put it in the freezer in a Ziploc bag and just save it up until you have maybe like 7 onions worth of outer pieces. And that'll be enough to really get started with. I've used up to 12 or 15 onions just because I really wanted a strong color. And it just gets a little bit brighter faster. So if you don't eat onions very often, that's an option, is just saving them as you go. And you want to bring this to a simmer. You do not want to boil, because boiling is going to turn this into kind of a mushy vegetable soup. And we really want that color to be bright and strong. So when I say simmer, I'm going to say, like, if you can see the little bubbles forming on the inside of the pot, and it's like maybe releasing a few bubbles coming up from the bottom, but you don't want that low boil to start erupting because that can shift your color to brown. We want to avoid that. Okay, so I'm going to let this sit for a little bit longer. And we've also got a dye pot that we worked on yesterday, and it's been sitting overnight. So the color not only got to simmer for longer, it also just released more color, even though we took it off the heat and it sat overnight. So that's what's in this pot, and I'm going to show you kind of the difference in what we can get between the two. It's already starting to turn yellow, which is a really good indicator. And this pot, which has sat overnight, is kind of like a more caramely color. See if I can get a little sample of this here. So that's the overnight onion color. So that's a little bit about preparing your dye and your fiber. I want to talk about different kinds of fiber and how they take color differently, because not all fiber is the same, and there's a little science behind it. There's a little magic behind it. So we are going to go over to, I'm going to show you some of the colors that I've got in my dye journal, which I've collected and done dyeing for, like, I think maybe over the last 4 years. This right here, these are little samples of silk velvet ribbon. You can tell that there's like a really rich selection of almost a rainbow of colors. I don't have any blue in here. There's not a lot of natural dyes that offer blue that are easy for people to find and use, unless it's indigo, which kind of dominates the field when you're talking about blues. But that's kind of some of the richness of color. When I was a kid, I remember just thinking, like, naturally colored dyed things were just for, like, the the prayer flags, the Buddhist prayer flags. That was the colors I thought you could get, like primary colors. I didn't understand you could get all these subtle, nuanced colors that were really warm and rich. I just wasn't interested until I became an adult and realized, like, there's just a whole world out there that is ready for us to explore regarding color. So here is an example. We've got avocado pits, and I've got some up here to show you. You can just save these. And who'da thunk, avocado pits can give you blush pink. So it's like a millennial breakfast toast, and it's a millennial color all at the same time, which I love. It's my favorite. So no shame in your game if you love avocado toast. And let's see, I've got silk here. I've got, this is Habitai silk, and this is silk velvet. And here's a darker color. And then I've got some linen up here. And whenever I dye with anything, I make sure to document the date, whether I used fresh or frozen avocado pits, the type of fiber that I used. So right here I wrote down, like, silk with alum. Alum is the mordant. And over here I have linen with alum, velvet with alum. And then down further I have, like, overnight soak or cold water, because there's a difference between if you add heat or not. So those, I'm going to set this over here. That's a little bit of an example. Whenever you are dyeing something, if you're just kind of doing it for fun one time, you don't necessarily need to keep a dye journal. But I love going back to certain colors and recreating things. But it's never always easy to get the same thing. So the more that you document, the easier it will be to be like, oh, I want this lighter shade of pink instead of the orangey red color. So I got to make sure that I use this and put it on for this amount of time. So I have, let's see, I have a little sample of, like, you just get a 3-ring binder and you just get some cardstock and do 3 hole punch. All you have to do for your journaling is add your samples in here, either with a stapler or with paper clips, and write down the dye that you use, the date, and all of the details about what went down during your dye session so that you can come back to it. And then after you get a variety of colors, you become like the coolest person everybody knows because you have this color Bible of all the different things that you can find. Like this is oxalis and it's found all over North America, but in California it grows huge and it gives this beautiful neon color, which it's my favorite yellow. I've become obsessed to the point where I'm like calling friends every spring that live in San Francisco and saying, all right, it's that time. Go out and grab some and mail them to me. Overnight, I'll pay for it. So yeah, it's really fun to be able to document all of this. Let's see. I wanted to talk a little bit about cellulose and protein fibers. We're going to get scientific here. And the difference between cellulose and protein fibers. So protein is going to be your wool and your silk. And those are protein fibers because they came from animals. And there is just a different makeup in the DNA part of the fleece or the silk from the caterpillars that has a protein that attaches to the dye and it takes the color a little bit stronger than the linen or the cotton. Linen and cotton would be examples of your cellulose fibers. So linen, let's see, I'll scoot this up here. Okay. So linen is going to be, you can see here, it's going to be a different shade than what the silk took. And let's see, this was for 2 hours. This was for 36 hours. There's just a wide range depending on what color or what type of fiber you use, what colors you're going to be getting. Here is marigold. These are orange and yellow marigolds. These are really easy to dye with because they're so easy to grow and find in the summertime. You can tell the linen right here took a different color than the cotton, but the silk here, it's a little hard to see. The silk right here is the most rich color. Now you can alter the colors that you're getting by adding the mordant, which is the alum, and that will help you attain a darker color with any of the fibers that you are using. Okay, so here's Osage Orange. I want to talk a little bit about shifting colors. I'm going to say our water in Oklahoma City is as close to pH, like a 7 on the pH scale, which is neutral. And you can get these little color strips if you want to, the litmus test, if you want to see what yours is in your neighborhood. And that's going to give you the clearest color if you have a neutral water source. If you want to shift your color, this is from Osage Orange, which this is kind of what it is at its normal range at pH 7, neutral. Here I added iron water, which shifted the pH and turned everything kind of an olive green and brown. So you get to play with that whether you add vinegar to make it more acidic or you add something that's a base to change the colors. So that's really fun. Let's see, here's one example of a blue that you can get. And it also shows you how, like over here, it is light fast. These are black beans and they're just dry, and I dyed with them in a bowl of water. You don't need to use heat, but you can. This is an example of cold water dyeing, and you get a range, excuse me, you get a range of blues and grays and sometimes violets. But if this was exposed to sunlight, then the color will shift a little bit. So you kind of have to, before you invest in like a beautiful silk dress that you're going to wear to a wedding outside, you need to kind of do a little research if you're working with natural dyes to know which dyes will change and which dyes are going to be color fast. Here's some black walnut. Anyways, the one thing I wanted to show you, this surprised me the most, and I get a little nerdy about it. This is aloe vera, which gave off a really interesting range of like a beige, blush pink, violet, and then like a dark tan color. So it's fun to see like the wide range of things that are offered depending on the fibers that you use. Okay, so we're going to switch back over to the big camera. We're going to check the dye pot. And it's got some color coming. I'm going to show you a little bit of what that looks like. And I'm going to take the avocado stones out. So you can, well, I'm going to get some more than that. This looks less desirable. It's almost the color of urine, but it smells much better, promise. You can see the difference between the color that you're going to get from something that has been in the dye pot for like 30 minutes versus something that has been in the dye pot overnight. So now I'm going to go ahead and add my fiber. And this is a cotton bag. It's already been mordanted with alum. I did that beforehand. And I'm going to stick all of these in. They've all been mordanted with alum. You can let that dry and then get it wet again to dye. You don't have to do it right beforehand. So if you've got a really busy weekend, but you just got a lot of onions you need to dye with, you can prepare all of your fiber the week before and let it sit, and it'll be just fine. Let's see. I want to show you some examples of some things that I've made using natural dyes. So this is a little art quilt, a little mini quilt. And these were all linen napkins I was going to make for friends and family, just like we talked about with Christine earlier. Hi, Christine. And then I decided I was going to make something else with them, like eye mask with beans you can heat up, or like a heating pad. And I made like 20 of those, but then I just decided I wanted that fabric so bad to use with something else. So I made an art quilt. And this is Osage Orange. This is avocado, and then there's some madder root in here. And the good thing about natural dyes is a lot of them have similar warmth to them, so they work really well together as far as like color pairing well. Here's an example of madder root, which is what I have in here. And this offers a wide range of like brick red to salmony blush pink, and you can get kind of a coral out of it. And this has been used for centuries, the madder root, and it's really hard to grow. You have to plant it from seed, and then like it takes 2 years before it's big enough to use. So I always order it online, online, but there's lots of local dyes that you can use, like marigolds that you can grow in the summertime. And of course, things that you can find at the store. So let's check on our fibers here. It might take them a little bit longer to heat up. And it's also fun to test the color range you can get between pre-mordanted, like you haven't used the alum, versus fiber that you have used the alum with, to really see the difference in lightness and darkness. It's just a reminder, like don't skip the steps that are time consuming because they really can make a difference in all of this. And it's not really worth it unless you're doing the things that are going to give you the color that you really want. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and put some things in here to see if we can also get some more color. Now you do want to have heat on most of your dyes. Cold, like black beans are some of the dyes that are the exception to the rule. You can do solar dyeing, which will allow you to put it in a jar of water and stick it outside, and you can let it be out there just like sun tea for a really long time. Also, some things will take color right away, so you might only need to leave it on the heat for 30 minutes versus things that you are going to have to do, like avocado stones, like low heat for an extended amount of time. And then they like to be reheated to get darker and darker color. So all of those things you kind of have to, there's no like one default rule with natural dyeing. But that's kind of the magic of it. It sparks your curiosity, and then you want to learn everything you can about each individual item. Or at least that's been the case for me. I get really nerdy about it. So once again, it's going to take a while, and natural dyeing is a very time-consuming thing. I wish I could pull this out and be like, ta-da, we've got dark, dark yellow. But we're gonna have to wait on this a little bit. If you do follow the steps at home, though, you will definitely be able to see results within the hour after putting your dye pot, after heating your dye pot and putting your fibers in. If you want to leave things in overnight, that's only going to make the color stronger. There's a point where it will kind of plateau, so it's not like you want to leave it in your kitchen for 4 days because you will grow mold and it'll get really stinky. I would say maybe like 36 hours at the most, unless you're really wanting to experiment with some crazy stuff. So that's kind of the whole process. And again, it's just about patience. Well, patience and wanting to keep waiting to see what you get. So let's see, what's our time here? We're going to give it maybe like 5 more minutes to see what we get out of this dye pot. I want to talk about how to store your dyes if you are collecting or foraging flowers in the spring or summer. You want to go ahead and grab what you can, but don't take more than you need. You always want to make sure it's either on your property or you have permission to be on the property wherever you're foraging. I like to go along the roadside, and if it's like a field of Queen Anne's lace, just grab as much as I can in a small area to make sure there's plenty left for all the pollinators that still need it. You can take it home and you can lay it on a screen or a drying rack or something where there's some air circulation. Once they're dried, you can stash them in jars, make sure the jars are open. Other things you can put in your freezer for a little bit. And then things you order online, you can get, they're kind of like dry goods already. So you can store them in things with lids, and they can be in their original form crumbled up, or they can be ground to a powder and be an extract, which can be more concentrated. So we'll be experimenting a little bit more with the ins and outs of all of those things in our winter class, which again is a 4-week session. We're going to be talking about how to do designs on your textiles. So if you're using it for, like, you want to create a pattern, we're going to be talking about shibori, which is the dye resist Japanese pattern. It's not a pattern, it's a way of folding things so that you get a pattern. We're also going to be talking about over dyeing on things. using 2 different dyes on the same textile, and creating things just using shifting it, so getting different colors out of a single pot. So there's going to be lots of goodness coming out of there. And I'm not sure exactly if we're going to see all of the darkness that we want to see coming out of here tonight, but let's see. We're getting a little bit of a shade of yellow. This has been, 10 minutes in the dye pot. It's starting to turn a little bit. And this has not even been on heat, but you can see how this is starting to take some color in the fringe here. This is a really strong dye pot. See if I can find my silk. So one of the things when you're using onion skins that you might want to do that I did not do tonight is you can skim off all of the particles that are in your dye pot if you don't want those to be in there with your fiber. Like if you just get a colander and after you have had your dye setting for a while, you could skim out all of the onion peels so that it's easier to find your fibers once they're in there. Especially with the silk, it can be really hard to distinguish between translucent onion skins and your samples. Well, let's see. I'm going to add some of this darker dye to this pot and see what we can get to happen here. One of my favorite dyes to use in the summer or late summer, early fall is Goldenrod. It grows in like August and September here in Oklahoma City. We're starting to get a little bit of a buttercream now. Goldenrod is really beautiful. You can get mustard colors from that. If you ever just want to go to like a thrift store and look for wool sweaters that, maybe you might not want to wear yourself, but you just kind of want to experiment with different fibers, check out the tags to make sure they're 100% natural. You can cut them up and make something else. You can take them apart to use them as yarn. So we can see here we got a little bit more color with lots of onion skins just hanging out. I'm going to take some more from this dye pot. You can always thrift some pots. You want to make sure you're not using aluminum pots. Aluminum is a metal that will shift the pH level and it can make the color a little bit more dull. So you want to make sure you've got stainless steel pots. You can find them at thrift stores pretty easily. They don't have to be as large as this, but you can also find, pretty inexpensive stock pots at most stores. Okay. All right, we're getting a little color with this yellow, and I don't know how easy that is to see from here. See if I can grab something else. Okay, so we've had this in for maybe 20 minutes. And I think we're getting a little bit of color, but you're going to want to have that in overnight. You only want to keep it on the heat for maybe like an hour tops. and then just keep it in the pot and check it the next morning. It's kind of a fun little surprise. This is safe to dump down the sink. It's not going to cause any problems. Maybe fish out your onion skins and put those in the trash, but it's safe to be putting down your home sink. And thank you for bearing with us today with the dye experience. And we would love to have some of you back in the winter session to explore even more. So thank you very much for joining us today.